Our next presenter is Mfundi Songo, and he's going to be talking about the Eskom perspective around embedded generation. Mfundi has over 25 years in power systems planning and analysis. He's currently the Senior Manager, Technology and Engineering at Eskom Distribution. Mfundi has, amongst other accomplishments, planned for Medupi transmission integration, battery energy storage systems, and recently he has led Eskom's grid access unit. So Mfundi, if you are there, if you are ready, then please load up your presentation and go for it.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, colleagues. The presentation mainly deals with the current challenges that we are facing. You know that currently, as Eskom, as the grid access unit custodian, as well as the planning custodian for both from a transmission, distribution, and then the final point of connection, there are a number of issues that we have to consider. And we're receiving a lot of applications for embedded generation, both small scale, large scale. And this shortage has brought a lot of interesting challenges. The first one is the generation constraint, which is all clear in the country. And this has brought in a number of accelerated projects which are in the IRP 2019. The current transmission grid has got constraints which have been regularly published, and they're spoken about almost on a daily basis. And the grid connection capacity availability GCCA document 2024, the latest one, which is a rolling document, is a living document, details all the challenges that we're talking about. Currently, there is a dearth of wires infrastructure, both in transmission and distribution. We don't have, for example, the Northern Cape is currently almost like it has got a roadblock. You cannot apply for anything unless a new transformer or a new line is constructed. On the distribution network infrastructure, we have always followed on transmission, and we've always followed the load. Unfortunately, with the current situation, we have to now follow generation, and that is where the country is. Then we have our grid access unit application processes and the like, which results in the allocation of capacity, which we would call reservation of capacity. Once you've paid for the budget quotation, which brings a lot of constraints into the network and to a lot of customers, specifically for those that want to build, and then they find that those that have paid for the capacity are not building, and then there's a delay in the issuing of customer estimate letters and budget quotations, the CELs, to potential investors. So these are some of the challenges that are publicized, and this is how we are going. This is how the presentation approaches this, so that it talks to the present, but it's at the same time it talks to what is it that the country, that Eskom is doing to address these challenges, and how we're addressing it with the stakeholders, because the whole energy industry rests from the municipalities, the IPPs, the investors, and so forth. They are all party to this. Next slide. Research is also part of that. And how do we frame the challenges? CSIR has been talking about the hosting capacity. It is a major issue, and we are fully aware of the tool and what is being discussed. And we have to ensure that we unlock generation evacuation potential. That is the major issue. And it must be noted that the grid does not have unlimited potential. Therefore, it is a finite entity. There is also the Schedule 2 ERA amendments, which has resulted in the opening of self-generation, which is disruptive. And there are willing options now that are coming in. And therefore, as Eskom and as engineers, we have to think out of the box. And we have developed what we have called the principles of how to handle the CLs, treating each IPP, for example. We have a substation where almost you've got about 15 applications. How do we handle that? And how do you quickly expedite that and send it out to the customers? We have the arbitrage and manipulation of any queuing rules. We have developed a fair set of rules, which we have called the queuing rules, which are such that they're transparent. At the same time, they have got an engineering principle and basis as to why they are developed. You can re-engineer them backwards and find out the reason as to why a certain customer, they are auditable. And this will ensure that we've got a list. We will always have disputes because we're in business, but we must have a principled way of having certain disputes or things coming up. And in that regard, we've developed a large document called the queuing rules. And this, we are engaging all the stakeholders. Next slide. And stakeholders like all engineers around here and participants will be familiar with the current predicament that we have, which is flighted here. I'm not going to go into the details. It simply states how a customer comes into Eskom's books and what will be their intention, the finances and the various stakeholders, such as the environmental issues, the land acquisitions, where you have a submission that comes to Eskom, you've got inputs, and you've got the NERSAs, which is regulation, and where do we come in? And if a customer comes in and now we've got the less than 100 megawatts, where do we apply for them? And within 6 months old, what we do, if we've got an application, and we've got a number of bid windows that have been out in the public, and some cost estimate letters have been sitting packed for more than a year. Even this morning, I received one which came in 2016 or 4. How do we handle that? Do we provide a cost estimate letter now? Do we go and re-review the network? And after 1 year, the cost estimate letter, we give the grace period for the, we give an allowance period for the customer to go and think about how are they going to actually connect, or whether they're going to look for finders, and then they confirm. Then we take that, we say, okay, pay a certain fee for the budget quotation fee based on the scope that is available. And that's, once you've paid the customer estimate fee, we are now in business. We have to say, first come, first served. How do we develop that? Those are the challenges that we're working on. Next slide. As such, this predicament brings in the issue of, sorry, this is the same slide, leave it like this. We have to have a certain differentiation between registration and licensing requirements. Registration will take a little bit easier, quicker, or licensing, which is which. NERSA has to give those guidelines. Now, do we accept customers that have registered or licensed? What are the willing arrangements that we have? How do we allocate capacity for those that are willing and those that are not willing? We have to have a working capacity, and we have to go through all these processes. So the wording that is underneath it was for the previous slide. So basically, ignore the document, the picture. The wording that is below is for it. Next slide. In terms of what I just said, we have to come to the common table. We've got a finite resource, which is the country, the size of these borders, and the substations that we have. The Eskom should be considered as a big battery, which has got an infinite capacity, may be connected, but that's not the case. Next slide. So in order to demystify this, we have to look at who is the network service provider. Let's consider the following. We have to improve our connectivity. Who gets access to the grid? And what does it mean when they've got access and visibility in the grid? And how does it impact the distribution network, which is the last point of connection for the IPP? And how do we keep cost reasonable for the MYPD and to the customers that are coming in? And how do we actually ensure that the shared costs are done in a way that is covers everyone? And what is the role of the interconnection as we move towards a modern and sophisticated electricity grid that is flexible? We've got an open market. How do we handle conflicts? And now with storage coming in, how do we actually, what type of storage? Currently, we're talking about the battery energy storage project which is being implemented, but we're going to have different types. It's the lithium ion one that's being used now. We'll have different and other technologies. So all those are bringing in a new set of challenges and technology and grid applications. This now forces us to have various stakeholders such as the researchers, CSIR, such as the universities, and other players in the industry to assist us and to develop as SAIEE Inc., not as Eskom. How do we deal with flexibility management? How do we curtail options, and where do we actually come to say these are options that are workable and these ones they are just on the research field? Next slide. How do we manage capacity? We have to look at the proximity of the distribution generators, the DRs. How are they linked to the existing load centers? If we look at where the map on the left-hand side, it shows the various provinces in the country. The green one is the Northern Cape. Most IPPs prefer that because the sun there has got a higher yield. The Western Cape is the wind. The Eastern Cape is wind too. Currently, we have not had so much activity in KwaZulu-Natal, the Free State, Mpumalanga, Limpopo, and the Northwest, and the Free State. We are seeing a lot of capacity coming in there. Now, we have had capacity in those areas, but now it's being wiped out, and the load requirements for the areas are changing, and the evacuation capacity is also going to dwindle, and the expression of interest are running all over the country. And we have to ensure that we talk to that. We have to break this down into bits. And how do we manage that? Next slide. We have to use the Gca principles and explain to how was it developed. We have to first of all look at the voltage levels. Is it at 66 kV, 88, which is distribution, up to 132, a transmission? Is it 220, 275, or 400 kV? And of late, because of the sizes that we're getting, we'll be talking at 765 kV. And in no time, we'll be talking about maybe having an HVTC, because the size of the quantums that we're getting, 1,300 megawatts. Of late, it is standard that you're getting 540 megawatts of PV in the Northern Cape. And then the assessment now says there is the bigger area. Look at the transformer evaluating area, the substation, which would have several transformers. Do we have capacity? Do we have the export capacity, not only of the transformers? Do we have the export capacity of the lines? Do we have the integration capacity of the substation? Do you have the integration capacity between the transformers, the lines, and the next substation, which is between the provinces? And then what is the net export capacity for a local area? Now we're getting, the envelope is getting bigger and bigger. And then how do you do this, simulate the studies and say the evaluation, the export capacity of this network of the supply area, it really has that capacity. After doing all this, you have all this number of scenarios, which the previous speaker spoke about, where you have the stochastic or the statistical approach. So it's a number of generators that are coming in that are to be connected. For us, the application for one information for bit window 5, we received over 350 applications for just one bit window. Now for bit window 6, we are expecting a similar application. For the others that are behind the load center, we are expecting over 500. So we are talking of over 1,000 applications which are going to be working. Now, what does that mean? It says that 2 customers, as an example, could want to apply from the same supply area. Now, these are the complexities and these are the issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So when you don't get as your CL or your application being considered, is because we're going through this evaluation process. Next slide. And then this evaluation process simply means that where we are as a country, we need a lot of new infrastructure. These are distribution requirements at this stage. For example, if we have to absorb 10.5 gigawatts, which is based on the GCCA 2023 with the costs, we can see on the left side, the Hydra cluster in Northern Cape. There's a lot of interest, therefore we have to develop that network. We've got the Eastern Cape, we've got the Western Cape, we've got the Northern, some parts of the Northern Cape, the rest, and then we've got the Free State and KwaZulu-Natal and Limpopo. We're expecting them to pick up. Now, how does this talk to the future? This talks to the just energy transition of the country, which is aspiring over close to 100 gigawatts. And this is a lot of investment, is a lot of money. Therefore, the public, the private investors and the rest of the people that the stakeholders, I have to come to the party. It's not only investment. The next slide. It is also the technical skills and the localization, the value chain. It has to talk about the consultants' capacity, the specialization skills, the knowledge management, and access to Eskom. Which standards are we going to use? We're currently having a lot of issues as we transition. There are health engineering discussions that we have. Which standard have you used for ice loading? Which standard have you used for transformers? Which standard are you going to use for the towers? And this is all leading to further the procurement processes. Which industries are we going to resuscitate? Which project management capabilities are we going to have? How do we handle contractors? Those are all issues that, if you look at this, these are multi-billion and they are multi-years. So this is not an overnight. It's sort of lifetime. In the next coming 20 to 30 years, all these things will have transformed the energy industry. Next slide. Therefore, for us as Eskom, we don't have infinite resources and infinite building capacity. The self-build agreement was initiated. It ensures that the changes, we have accredited suppliers and contractors that are in a position to deal with the large-scale volumes of construction. And this accreditation is going on. Now, this brings its own challenges. Companies that are constructing, leaving, while or some having other issues, joint ventures, refund mechanisms, and these are the things that we're handling. They're part of the daily bread that we're having. Next slide. Then we also have the challenge of pricing. Someone says, okay, there you are, we've got a shared network. How do we share this cost? We've got a shared network. There are other aggregated costs, four connections or 3 per substation from one customer or one developer. One developer decides to change their minds. How do you refine them? There are others that will come once you have constructed the network, which will almost like free riders who will wait up until everything is done. Now that leads to hoarding of capacity. Those are all the issues that we're going through. Now we have to go through the legal side of it and have guidance and have approval from the Eskom side as well as the regulators. And this has to go in line with the constitution of the country and the fairness to ensure that we don't disadvantage other customers or we seem to be having a preference for certain ways of doing things. And this comes with a lot of technical challenges. Next slide. And what have we done? I've been speaking about all this. We have developed what we call the queuing principle, which is mathematical. We've workshopped it, and we're still workshopping it. We've got a number of stakeholders, including this is a good forum. We can have one session where the SAIEE and AMEU and others can call to us, where we are defining the queuing principles. How are they applied? How do we understand from first principles? And how should we adopt them? We are already adopting them because without them, we can't do much from the distributed energy generators. And how are the developers taking it? What is their appetite? We need comments. What is the regulator saying? And then what are the rules for cost allocation? And where did we arrive on them? And how we're going to handle them going into the future? Next slide. The queuing process, I'm leaving this for you as a takeaway. Eventually, it will be adopted and shared with the industry association for transparency. It will be a way, we are aspiring to have it web-based as part of the application when you make an application to the grid access unit. And in terms of the grid access unit, of late, some of you that are in the IPP space, you might have noticed that you are getting your customer estimate letters, CLs, far much quicker. We have aligned our principles and we have listened to the issues that we've mentioned. We've cut on a number of issues and we've made it, we've cut to the bone. And we are answering to the need rather than just being we are following all the processes, but we are answering to the need of the country. We are working on the budget court at the moment, and we will ensure that in the long run, we have a development of an automated real-time management of the queuing process. As Eskom, we've got the transmission and the distribution divisions. We are more aligned now, but then the developers and the other people at the end, which is the Munics and the like, and financiers, we have to work together to unlock the capacity so that we have a management of expectations from the capacity, from the timelines, from the other regulatory processes. And we are also having an evolution of the self-build agreement. Previously, we had capacity, it was easier. Finance was the issue. Now it's both. We have to have. We already there are emerging issues. How is the shared infrastructure constructed? How are JVs being handled? All those things are coming, and we are expecting that to be part of our daily code. The grid code is changing. Stakeholders are being involved. We have to have a flexible pricing mechanism which is agile and is aligned to NERSA when we are looking at that support. And further towards the finite end, we're looking at the longer term at nodal pricing, where we have to investigate options of how to integrate DRs in remote areas. And with that, I would like to thank you. And I think I've had my 20 minutes. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Pretty perfectly 20 minutes. Thanks very much, Mfundi. Thanks very much for bringing your and Eskom significant experience to this webinar.